They connected these two, didn't they? They said, well, you want to be able to have voice over IP. Was that supposed to cost more for for emergency services, or?
Oh, that added 50 cents last year.
So they're already charging that.
That was mandated last year. We had to pass that state mandate. So we passed that because we were
So they're
mandated.
still putting on the pressure, even though that's all covered.
We call it unfunded mandates, but what they do, they pass, like everything else, it runs down to the consumer. The people picked that up last year. We have a 911, an enhanced 911. We have sales tax. We have local utility tax. Look at your phone bill. It ends up being 25 to 30% of your bill. It's amazing.
I think many people don't look at that phone bill and realize how many different taxes are there. And so far, you as a commissioner, the commissioners have not passed. You have not said, well, we're going to maximize the tax on. So you said no, you haven't done it so far, right? Which penalizes us. In other words, the state's not giving us our fair share of the taxes that we're already paying.
Yesterday, we had to take action on it. I argued the fact that we still had $1.5 million in our reserve.
Okay. So what did you do?
This last year, we used our reserve to continue funding and keeping all of our 911 operators in place. We still have enough money to keep our 911 operators in place and wait for our economy to pick up a little bit, or wait for the legislature to realize the unfair mandate that they're putting upon the people of Clark County.
Okay.
They're punishing us more or half as much as what they want us to raise.
So there was a vote yesterday by the three county commissioners.
Yeah.
And so basically to maximize that tax, to add that to the 911, in other words, to go along with what the state is putting the pressure on to do, which is to maximize that. In other words,
we would have had to add the 20 cents.
So how did that vote turn out?
It passed without my vote.
In other words, the three county commissioners, in other words, Steve Stewart and Mark Bolt, passed that tax and added that tax to our extra 911 tax. How much did it add?
$1.1 million.
To our, even though we didn't need anywhere near that amount.
We didn't need 1.1 million. And best case, worst scenario, paying the $500,000 phone bill that the state stopped paying, we were only $800,000 in debt.
Huh. Are you very often the dissenting vote on things like this?
I get very emotional.
Do you really?
I try not to, but sometimes I go home.
No, you care about this. Your people are.
You can't keep passing the buck to the people. These are tough times. The government needs to tighten their belt the same. You don't add a tax when you've got $1.5 million. We have more in reserve than what the tax would raise.
I think you're not alone in that conviction. I think a lot of people feel like, man, I can hardly get by as it is. What are you doing adding here, a little there, and it incrementally just bumps up whatever people are paying. And that's a monthly, if you're going to have any kind of a phone service, you're going to be paying that now. So that added.
Kind of goes back and validates the Charter County thing where you elect your commissioners from within their district to make them more accountable.
Well,
I don't think the people of Clark County appreciate us putting another over $1.1 million burden upon their backs. It might look like only 20 cents. It's still $1.1 million, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, that's every month, right?
Every month.
So every month, another 20 cents for every, that's on your phone, your cell phone, any kind of phone service, right?
Yes.
And for a family where you've got maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, depending on how many kids in the family, how many cell phones you have, that's every month.
Yeah.
Charge that.
I guess if you're lucky enough to be employed, may not appear to be a whole bunch. But if you have to have a phone because it's a necessity, it's not fair. It's also not fair to put a tax on when you have a reserve.
Yeah. Well, their cell phones these days are our lifelines. That's how we communicate with everybody.
We have more needs down the road.
Sure.
We do. We need to buy more new radios down the road. But let's cross that bridge when we get there. We're burying our people in debt and unemployment. We can't keep doing it this way.
Well, I would assume that if people wanted to, let's say that we're going to invest in new radios, for instance, just what if? And we figure out about what the cost of those ought to be. And rather than to bond and borrow and then pay interest on that. I would think, I mean, just as because I'm a business guy. As a business guy, we don't go borrow and then pay on on our. What we do is we save up first and say we're going to buy that particular thing. We set the money aside and we'll budget. And finally, when the time comes, we're going to get it. We'll draw from that cash, get her done, and I would think that would make sense in this case for the radios.
It's funny you mentioned that, because that's what they told me they were going to do with the extra money that they were taxing you.
And that never happened, huh?
Well, it will. I'm sure it will. But the thing is,
it really going into
I keep saying, we have $1.5 million today. The tax will raise $1.1 million every month, and and they said, well, we'll just put the extra money that we're taxing into a capital reserve to buy those radios when it comes time to buy the radios.
Well, if it's designated, hopefully now that the tax is there, hopefully it will be used for the right purpose. Can I change topic here for a minute?
Sure.
One of the other current topics that some people know about in our county and some don't is the idea of bringing building a baseball stadium here for a minor league who is over the last several months, I guess since January, been talking with various individuals, and that is something that's going to cost money, about $23 or $24 million to build a stadium, and we don't have that money sitting around, so we'd have to borrow that. And in order to borrow that, you have to create some kind of a new fee or a new tax, and whether it be a fee or tax, as a citizen, to me, it's all tax.
That's right.
And I'm surprised at some of the process of this, because that new tax, if I understand you correctly, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, that means that every time you go to a play or a movie, any entertainment where you're paying for a ticket, 50 cents gets tacked onto that ticket price, and that goes toward the baseball stadium. Is that right?
No, David, I got to tell you that I was the last guy in the county to learn about this, but since that time, since the newspaper started calling me and asking me why I was doing this, I've come to learn about the need for the county to bond to build this facility for the Beavers, and I've come to learn that this entertainment fee that they're proposing, putting on anything and everything to include our fare, would be for the baseball players or for the baseball stadium. And while you might believe in a user's fee, I always weigh things back. What is the role of government? And I believe in user's fee. Yep. I used to race boats. I bought my own gas, paid my own way there. I didn't ask anybody else to step up and add to my funds when they went to the movie theater with their family. That's what this is about. It's like having somebody else pay for your entertainment, not the role of government, and they need to pay for it themselves.
In other words, this team that's coming, this is a privately owned team, baseball team.
Yes.
And so it's really a private business. And like a movie theater is a private business, they might be part of a bigger corporation or something, or a public stock owned or something, but this is basically a private business. And so the plan for funding for this is to tax some private businesses, which would be like theaters and people that put on plays, and to take that income and give it to that, basically, in effect, indirectly, to that private business.
That's right.
So it's really the shifting of funds in order for it's entertainment. It's where the government gets into the entertainment business.
Their argument is that they bring business here. They bring more business to the hotels and to the restaurants. If the restaurants and hotels believe in it, let them pay for it. Don't ask me if I was to go buy a ticket to go to the fair that I have to pay for the baseball.
So we all, I mean, who would argue against baseball? There's a lot of people that like baseball.
And apple pie and all that stuff.
Sure,
Yeah, sure.
Baseball's a wholesome activity. It's good. There's baseball diamonds all over the county here in parks and schools.
That's when we used to go out there and play on the dirt, though.
Yeah.
I'm sure this would be AstroTurf.
Yeah, well, actually,
But you know, government gets involved in this stuff. You know, people had a chance if they had an initiative and referendum in place. We wouldn't own a golf course that loses $300,000 a year roughly.
Which is another form of entertainment.
Yes.
But let me just ask you about some of these facts here. I've checked into some of these things, and basically the name of the team is Yakima Bears. And of course, if they move away from Yakima, they're currently housed in Yakima. They have a stadium that they built about a decade or so ago, maybe 10 or 12 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. And they haven't been doing very well in Yakima. And so the idea is to go to a more populated area, and hopefully they do better there. And they're a minor league. They're an A team rather than AA or rather than AAA. They're just between high school and college. So they're not professional, but I'm sure they're entertaining to watch. They have a short season. They play 38 games per season. There are 8 teams that they play in basically this northwest region. There's east and west, and hopefully they can get enough people to play here. Now that all sounds really good, and I think everybody would support that. Well, sure, please come be in our area. But the thing is that is the question is what it's going to take to get them here, and that is, well, you got to build a brand new stadium. Well, okay, how much is that going to cost? $23 or $24 million. Where are you going to get that money? Well, we're going to borrow it. Who's going to pay the bill on that? Well,
taxpayers.
New tax.
Well,
new
if they don't pay for it, they're going to be responsible for it. And that's the reason I mentioned those other things, such as the Hilton that we got involved with, the amphitheater that we got involved with, the new building at the fairground. These are not paying for themselves. They're going into debt. The economy is bad, and we're losing on all of these. And I see this going the same place. I have a tough time recognizing the role of government in entertainment. Through history, I recognize of all things the fairgrounds. But I don't, over in Spokane, they've even gotten into motocross. Do we want to go to motocross next? Do we want to go to stock car racing?
Well,
where do we draw this line if we start down this path when government itself is not surviving and we're removing services to the people?